Well, Shane, we're going to week 5 here, and obviously we've hit the halfway point of the regular season. Really, here yet again, pretty much everything's taken control. I mean, we've seen one game really not go to the way that we kind of expected, the Lena Winslow-Forreston game, but credit to Lena Winslow because they've really come out of the gates stronger than what we've seen them in recent years, and they just look to keep getting stronger as the season keeps going by. Looking into this week, though, we do have some good matchups. Speaking of, Lena Winslow with EPC, and then Milledgeville and Orangeville take a battle to try and kind of get an edge on who's going to take on Aquin for the Upstate Conference crown as well.
Right. Hard to believe we're already talking about week 5 games. You mentioned that Lena Winslow and Forreston game. That seems like forever ago to me. We got some good matchups this week. But as collectively speaking, I mean, a lot of teams are kind of starting to get to the point where they're going to start breezing through the schedule. Forreston's on the home stretch of their tough stretch coming up here. Should be smooth sailing after this week, I would think. And, the same thing for Lena Winslow. EPC's got a couple of tough ones, but generally speaking, you're starting to get to the point where you're looking at how many wins each team has as you're pushing towards the playoffs.
Right, and I mean, that's the great thing about this point of the season because, week 5, Lena Winslow, if they happen to beat EPC or if Aquin happens to upset Forreston, they already become playoff eligible with their 5 wins. But it also, not saying either one of those will happen, but it gives you an idea of what we can start looking for as far as playoff points, potential finishing standings. It gives you a lot to really look forward to as the season keeps progressing, and you can almost start to predict where teams are going to fall and almost first-round matchups to point.
Right. We were talking a little bit about that over the weekend. It's kind of exciting, if a certain team goes 5-4, they might be matched up with a 9-0 of the local team, even with 1 through 16. It's obviously exciting when you get to the point where you can start pulling out projections. Obviously, Monday will be the second week of the IHSA Outlook, so yeah, things are really starting to take place here.
So, I mean, it's really getting to that point in time where games mean everything now. I mean, it's not like they did it before. Every game means something, especially in high school football where you got to win 6 to guarantee to get in. So, really, you're in the playoffs from week 1 on, so to speak. But, I mean, you can afford a couple losses here and there. But it's really time to get going. And, last week we said that we'd start seeing the difference between the contenders and the pretenders. And, I mean, you're looking, especially at the upstate side, you got 3 teams that are 2-2 right now. Which of those 3 are actually going to propel themselves into that playoff matchup, and which are going to fall further down and not really amount to much? And same can be said over here on the northwest side. I mean, we've got 4 teams that are 3-1. I mean, we kind of anticipated it being that level,
right?
But it's something.
It's no secret, looking at the Northwest, a lot of those teams, pretty much beat up on each other week in, week out. Obviously, Winslow and Forreston are kind of on their own level as far as the Northwest is concerned. Then you look at the Upstate, and it's really taking shape to what we thought it'd be, kind of a conglomeration of any given week someone can beat each other. Even with Aquin sitting at 4-0, hasn't really looked as impressive as a 4-0 normally would look on the Northwest side. So obviously, you get some parity there. It's fun, though.
It is fun, and we kind of anticipated the parity, which makes it a lot of fun. It makes people get more active and wanting to see what's going to happen next, and it really drives that button. But we're on to week 5, and we're going to bring that up right now. Okay, Shane, here we got Polo and Warren taking off with each other. Warren comes in with an 0-4 record, while Polo comes in with that 2-2 record. Last week, Warren lost 32-12 to River Ridge, while Polo lost that upstate game of the week to Aquin 28-0 after they were tied at zeros at halftime. Last year in this game, Polo won 42-28. This game also took place in week 5, and it too was in Polo. This year, same thing, Warren at Polo. But I think we're going to see a little bit different outcome this time around.
Yeah, it's no secret that Warren is probably not as good of a squad as they had last year. Even last year wasn't a great squad, to say the least. And then you look at Polo, 28-0 on a box score looks pretty bad, but when you consider you were tied to 0 at halftime, it really makes you scratch your head and think, man, that's a game that we could have potentially had. Obviously, Aquin's the better team, and I'd put that game more along the lines of why Aquin didn't score in the first half compared to why you had such a difference in scores.
This is true. I mean, Aquin's first play of the game, they fumbled the ball right off the snap. The snap didn't really make it back to Gamer, and Polo recovered. And then you look at the second quarter, and the second quarter was literally dominated by Polo as far as time of possession. They held the ball for 11 minutes in the second quarter, basically marching down the entire field, but it stalled at the Aquin 27-yard line, and a turnover on downs gave Aquin the ball back just to basically take a knee and take it to halftime with that 0-0 score. So, I mean, that was an opportunity for Polo to really get on the scoreboard, but they couldn't get the drive finished.
Right, and when you're Polo and playing a decent team like Aquin, you gotta really make that count. It's no joke when you're talking about time of possession in high school football, especially at this level, where not a lot of teams throw a bunch. Or if you are facing a team that throws a lot, it's important to eat the clock like Polo did, but you really got to cash in there. Moving forward to Warren, though, Polo should have no problem cashing in big time this week. I really like this matchup for Polo. Warren, it's been a rough season. I don't see that changing at this point. Warren has some athletes. It's just their dwindling numbers really has hurt this squad.
Yeah, and I mean, last week they put up a good fight against River Ridge. But River Ridge just has a few more of the bigger athletes that are more mature age-wise and playing time-wise than what Warren has available. I mean, River Ridge is somewhat of a young team still, but most of those starters are 2- and 3-year starters as well. So, I mean, they've taken their licks, and they keep coming back and, playing. And it showed in the game. I mean, they have that experience under their belt where Warren doesn't, and they took control of that game.
Well, and that's just it. For Warren, they could look at that and say, okay, we're going to take our lumps. It wasn't that long ago that very good Stockton team that came out of the upstate, as sophomores, they were getting their butts handed to them.
Oh, yeah, they had one season they were what?
I think
2-7 or
2-7, 3-6, but by the time that class was seniors, we all saw what happened there. So, obviously, Warren can take last week's game and say, if we stick with it, get some of our underclassmen the experience at the varsity level, we'll see where this can go in a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I have no doubt that Warren will be able to build things back to where they want them to be. Like you said last week, Coach McNutt is a good coach. He's got the program going in the direction it needs to go in. They just need to get kids to keep believing and keep sticking to a point and going out and playing, and they'll be all right. But, I agree with you, though. I do like Polo in this game. So we go to River Ridge at Stockton. River Ridge comes in this game with a 2-2 record, while Stockton comes into this game with a 2-2 record. Shane, last week River Ridge beat Warren 32-12, and Stockton lost to West Carroll 14-0. In this game last year, Stockton won 38-0 in week 2. That was also a game that Hayden Fox did not play in due to an injury. So Stockton really came together, had enough athletes to pull out still a big win. And, of course, that was well before River Ridge really got things going. This year, I still feel that River Ridge had somewhat of a bad loss, in my opinion, to AFC. Not saying that AFC couldn't beat River Ridge, but I think River Ridge could have played that game a little bit differently than they had. Where Stockton, their 2 losses are actually to Marquette and to West Carroll, both games that we predicted that they would lose. So officially, Stockton hasn't lost an upstate game yet. So realistically, even though they're 2-2, they're still tied with Aquin as far as the records are concerned for the upstate side of the conference.
Right. I mean, Stockton, as far as the upstate side is considered, has played a pretty tough schedule to this point.
Yes.
Ottawa Marquette, a semifinal team, and West Carroll, probably a 2A playoff team this year. 38-0 last year without Fox. Realistically, this could very well go that same route. I don't think it'll be that big of a difference. So, River Ridge, you're talking about that loss to AFC. You could be going in this game 3-1. You got Moose Heart on the back end of your schedule. There's a 4th win. Could you steal one against
somebody else?
Stockton, Polo. Those, to me, this is a winnable game for River Ridge. It's a big if, but if you come ready to play, which coming off that win against Warren, maybe it propels River Ridge into something. But I obviously understand River Ridge being a little more pumped up because it was against Warren, even though these kids haven't experienced at the varsity level the co-op that River Ridge and Warren had. But, River Ridge is kind of, okay, we got 2 wins. We're feeling pretty good about ourselves. And Stockton, it's really nothing to hang your hats on losing to Ottawa and West Carroll. I anticipate much of how last year went, but probably not on the same scale, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. And I was a bit surprised that West Carroll did not beat Stockton by a greater margin. Based off of what we've seen from West Carroll so far, it almost seems like the last 2 weeks they've kind of underperformed.
Are they regressing?
Right. And that's how you feel because, you look at the game that they played against Lena Winslow, and Lena Win got up 28-6 before West Carroll put 2 more scores on the board to make it a respectable score. But you think about what they did do in the first half and just came up empty. And this was not the same West Carroll team that played that tough Lena Winslow team. And, I know Lena Winslow made mistakes in that game that allowed West Carroll to capitalize on, maybe not necessarily score. But at the same token, when you can play to that level against the number 1 ranked state team, and you're taking on a team who a lot of people didn't even have ranked in their preseason top 10, haven't had them ranked in their top 10 all season long, and you only beat them by 2 scores, it says a lot about what Stockton has done to get better as the seasons come on.
Well, that's just it. I think Stockton, we kind of anticipated that new coach, everything's new to them. You're going to progress as the season goes on. This could be a decent to good playoff team by the time they get there, And as far as that West Carroll, how that plays in this, that could just be a classic of playing up to the level of competition. We've seen that so many times over the years.
Right. Yep. No.
So I like Stockton in this game, though. River Ridge, you've done good getting to 2-2. You should be 3-1, but you never know what can happen.
I agree, and I do like Stockton, and Stockton is a tough place to play at John O'Boyle Field. So Blackhawks are my pick in this game as well. Okay, Shane, so now we go to River Valley where they play host to AFC. This is the first ever meeting between the two. Both of them come in with 1-3 records. Last week, AFC lost to Orangeville 20-0, while River Valley lost 65-0 to Milledgeville. River Valley plays in the Northeast Athletic Conference. We said that last week. We know outside of Marquette, the majority of them just aren't competitive. Their most competitive team in that conference was Chicago Hope, who left for the Chicago South Suburban Catholic League. And look at them now; they're 4-0 and dominating bigger schools. But here we are, AFC River Valley, 65-0 Milledgeville. Do you see something similar with AFC going down the River Valley?
Yeah, AFC's bus starts, gets them there, come home with a win. Realistically, you know, you're not facing a good team. Show up, play your game, get the confidence back, get to 2-3, see what the rest of the season holds. You know, do good for the conference. Other teams are counting on your points, so just do your job.
One, I think it's a great opportunity for Coach Winterland to reassess what he's got going on, get things working that haven't worked so far in the season. Because I mean, I think AFC's better than a 1-3 team. I think you would probably somewhat agree with that. We preseason picked them to be 3-6, but also said that they could compete with the other schools if they got going.
Well, and in all fairness, look at AFC's schedule at this point. You know, they played Dakota, who's 3-1. They played Aquin, who's 4-0, and they played Orangeville, who's 3-1.
Right.
You know, that's 10-1 right there in those 3 losses.
Yeah.
Nothing to hang your head about.
No, it's not. And AFC is still a good team. I think they still have a lot of potential. Granted, they got to win out to make the playoffs, or at least get 4 more wins, I should say, because 5-4 will get them in.
Right.
But at the same token, they need this win too to help other teams in the conference make the playoffs if it comes down to 5-4 teams and playoff points.
Very well. Yeah, I mean, show up, play your game. The rest should take care of itself.
Yeah, it should. Raiders win big. So our big crossover matchup of the week brings Aquin to Forreston, where Aquin comes in with a 4-0 record and Forreston comes in with a 3-1 record. Last time these two teams met, Shane, was back in 2006. Forreston won this game 29-7. Granted, that was a decade ago already, believe that. Man. But, you know, last week, Aquin pulled out a 28-0 win over Polo, as we previously mentioned, and Forreston got a big win over EPC, 30-18, which was a really close matchup, especially through the first half, and you can even sit there and say, even in the second half, as Forreston finally put it away with a block punt that got recovered in the end zone for the only touchdown of the entire second half.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because realistically, this is 2017. You know, you go back to last year, you're a 4th-1 away from this matchup. You know, in the semifinals when Aquin showed up beat Ottawa Marquette. You know, a lot of people from Aquin really wanted that matchup, and it's probably a good thing it didn't happen, to be honest.
Well, if you look at Forreston's playoff run, I think that's
just, I mean, and, you know, coming into this game this year, you thought, okay, man, we're going to have 2 4-0 teams facing off. You know, maybe we hyped that. I don't want to say hype. We kind of put Aquin at a little higher than what they possibly are. I mean, they're still 4-0, don't get me wrong. Kind of envisioned a little more power at 4-0. And Forreston, we obviously picked at 4-0, but that loss to Galena was probably the best thing that could ever happen to them. This game comes down to a couple things for me. If Forreston runs the ball the way they have, Aquin has no answer for a power run team to this point. Second, on the defensive side of the ball, Forreston shuts down, not necessarily shuts down Deemer. That's hard to do, but don't give up the home run ball. You know, put your best corner on Cummins. You know, realistically, Aquin likes the home run ball when the underneath routes are open. So,
yeah, no, I agree with you. Watching Aquin last week, it was very evident that they tended to. They had some good plays where you saw Polo would get in on the rush, flush the quarterback out, quarterback would make a play, and it was good. I mean, Deemer was 11 for 16 passing last week for 173 yards. He threw 3 touchdowns, but they got off to a slow start. And then, of course, like we said, Polo held the ball for the entire second quarter as they drove the field to no promised land. But Aquin was able to come back out in the second half and be the team we kind of anticipated them being. Now, I mean, granted, they have moved some people around. Steagle's no longer at running back, so they've been going with Keegan Keister more. And Cole Ludeking's back in the lineup, which is good to see as well for Aquin, because that was a missing piece of the puzzle the last couple of weeks. But, like you stated, I mean, has Aquin really got off to the kind of start we anticipated them to be at with the firepower that they've had? No.
Yeah, I mean, 4-0 is 4-0. Unfortunately, this week I think that they're going to get a little bit of a taste in the difference in the sides of the conference, to say the least. It'd be great for the conference to see this as a close game. I just don't know that that's going to necessarily be the case.
You're right. I mean, it would be great for the conference to have this as a close game, but here it is. You got basically number 1 or 2 of the Northwest side against number 1 of the Upstate side. It's something that we've been wanting to see for a long time, well, especially with the way Stockton's been going through many years.
You know, 2011, that Stockton-Galena Winslow matchup, that was the game.
Right. And it was a big game. I mean, even Aquin that year was huge, and I mean, Stockton actually beat Aquin that year.
Right.
So, but people that don't think that the Upstate isn't at the level of the Northwest, you're going to find out this week, in my opinion. I like the Cards, and I like them in a big way.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Shane, we get Amboy and East Dubuque for our first Northwest matchup. This game is in East Dubuque. Last year, East Dubuque won this game 21-20. This game, once again, took place in Week 5. This year, both teams come in with similar records at 1-3. So it kind of echoes our AFC River Valley game as far as the records are concerned. But last week, Amboy did pull out their first one of the year against against Dubuque, not AFC. They beat Dubuque 27-6. While East Dubuque lost to Dakota 41-26. Shane, being that it was a close game last year, I still feel East Dubuque has quite a bit more returners than Amboy did from last year's team. I could see this game going either way, but I'm kind of leaning in one direction. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, we've got, 4-3, 1-1. You know, you're looking at 9 matchups. This isn't a game of the week, and this might be the closest game we have all week, realistically.
Well, it's a big game.
You look at that. I mean, how much stock do you put in to either one's schedule? How much stock do you put into East Dubuque's loss to Dakota, because we don't know what they are? You know, Amboy's lost to Milledgeville, EPC, West Carroll. I mean, those are 3 playoff teams right there.
Right.
But still has a brunt in Lena, Winslow, Dakota, and Forreston going forward.
But if you look at East Dubuque, I mean, they've lost to EPC, Lena, Winslow, and Dakota, which are all 3 playoff teams.
Right. I mean, basically, these 2 teams are kind of like a mirror image of themselves in a way. I mean, I've talked to several people that say Amboy looks like a college team with their size and stuff. Why aren't they winning games?
Which they kind of did
last year. Last year, they were one of the biggest teams in the conference. It's in East Dubuque. You know, it's one of those pick'em games, I guess.
It is. Let's flip a coin. And
right. I mean, realistically, long bus ride to East Dubuque. I don't know who to pick, to be honest with you.
Well, I'll start off with what I'm going to go with. I like where East Dubuque's coming. They, last week against Dakota, granted, I know one of their scores was a pick 6, but I still feel Dakota is much better than East Dubuque is. But they really hung with and played with Dakota for the majority of the game.
Right.
So that speaks volumes to me on a personal level. But, Amboy hasn't really put up a lot of fight.
In the last 2 years, realistically.
True. I mean, I like the way that they played West Carroll. They played West Carroll really tough. They played Milledgeville really tough. Granted, through the first 3 weeks, everybody got destroyed by EPC. And that was anticipated and expected anyway. So, I'm like you. I don't know who I want to pick, but I do think East Dubuque is my pick to win this game.
Very well. And all those are valid points, and a case could be made for like you're saying, Amboy for their matchup with Milledgeville and West Carroll. But I touched on it a little bit. Long bus ride to East Dubuque. I guess I'll take the Warriors as well.
All right, Shane. So we go back to Pectonica this week as they play host. Or I'm sorry, Du-Pec plays host to Dakota.
Right?
It is. The Rivermen take on the Indians this week in Pectonica. It's Pectonica's homecoming. Dakota comes in with a 3-1 record. Du-Pec comes in with an 0-4 record. Last year, Dakota beat Pectonica 41-8 in Week 7. Last week, Dakota beat East Dubuque 41-26, while Du-Pec lost to Amboy 27-6. Speaking on Dakota's part, I don't feel the Indians are playing up to their potential since Week 3 when they played Forreston.
Yeah, they kind of didn't put on a good show that week, that night. Had some things that were going their way, and as soon as some adversity, it seemed like the Indians kind of folded easily. That's something they got to work to get past. And then they followed that up against East Dubuque, where we kind of anticipated almost a running clock situation. At least I thought that was very possible based on what some of the other team, or EPC in general, did to East Dubuque. And, Dakota playing their game, we kind of paired with with EPC as far as similar scores might or should be. Dakota's got some question marks in their secondary that they need to iron out. Also getting past when you're down a score, keep fighting. Just simple but big things that they just got to keep earning on.
Well, one of the biggest things I see with Dakota is they need some mental toughness. And it goes with hanging their heads. I mean, you saw it in Forreston when they got down, boom.
Yeah.
And it echoed what Dakota has been for the last couple of years. We're down.
We're done.
We're done. They got to get that mindset out of there. That's what good teams have to do. You see so many times where teams will lose to the name on the jersey, and I think Dakota has reverted back to that phase where they're now losing to the team on the jersey before the game ever starts. But hopefully they can overcome that. Maybe Forreston was just a learning curve for a young team. East Dubuque, obviously we know East Dubuque is also somewhat of a young team, but more of an experienced young team than what this year's Dakota team is. Put up a fight with Dakota. Came out on the short end of the stick there. But when you said EPC and Lena Winslow, the way that they played East Dubuque, and Dakota not matching up with that, tells me a big thing is that Dakota can't match up with top 3 in the northwest side of the conference.
Which is basically what we didn't think it'd be that way, but I'm sorry, you're getting to be to the point in 5 games in, you are what you are.
Yeah.
Like it or not, I guess, you got stuff to build on, and I don't mean to take all the time to talk about Dakota here, because we spent a lot of time on Dakota, but as far as Du-Pec's concerned, you played Amboy tough. You're gonna have a hard time with Dakota this week. Don't get me wrong, but you can take that loss and build towards this. I mean, Dakota is vulnerable to big plays. Maybe you can exploit them on the pass because Dakota has given up some passing situations this year. So, but for me personally, I think that the most interesting part, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but the most interesting part of Friday night at Pacatonica with Du-Pec and Dakota might be the first off contest.
And it could be because Du-Pec, I anticipate Du-Pec to struggle a little bit with the co-op. Right. That's anticipated. But you see it in their younger levels where they're really starting to become formidable, kind of what we anticipated. Plus, they're not too far removed from their junior high days, knowing and playing under the same system. But I agree with you. It's Pacatonica's homecoming, but I expect Dakota to spoil it. All right, so we're on to Galena and West Carroll. This time, this game is taking place in Savannah. Last year, West Carroll won this game 48-3. It took place in Week 8. This year, Galena comes in with the 0-4 record, while West Carroll comes in at 3-1. Galena basically copying their record at this exact same point from last year, while West Carroll has improved to what we anticipated them basically being around at this time last year. Last week, West Carroll beat Stockton 14-0, while Galena lost to Lena Winslow 54-12. That was a big win for Lena Winslow last week. But Galena, West Carroll, you got two teams that both like to kind of throw the ball around. So you could see potentially a big score here.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder, especially after the last couple of weeks with West Carroll, they've kind of played to the level of the competition. We talked about that earlier in the video, close wins against Amboy, and then, that close win to Stockton where some people thought that they should have won a little bigger and didn't, or maybe Stockton's improving. I mean, it could be a number of things. And, I don't want to go into the whole why isn't Galena winning. We're trying to get past beating a dead horse, so to speak. We can sit here and talk about that every week, I guess. I mean, and then
Galena's not winning because they don't want to win.
Right. And, the Lena Winslow Galena score of Friday, I mean, that's just... I mean, you look at the last couple of years, and it's kind of become a normal thing. But you look the past 30 years, and it isn't something you'd anticipate seeing. Some other good teams and other good schools have gone through that before, so we'll leave it at that. West Carroll is one of those sleeper teams that we pick them in the kind of in the middle of the conference and can play with the upper teams of the conference, or can get blown out on by the upper teams in the conference. I mean, it's basically depends which West Carroll team shows up, so to speak.
Well, and we're going to find out real quick here, as in Week 6, 7, and 8, West Carroll plays Dakota, EPC, and Forreston in that order.
Right.
So, really, this is a must-win game for West Carroll.
Right.
And then you got a test. I mean, granted, you already played Lena Winslow, but you got Lena Winslow, and I'm sorry, but you got Lena Winslow in Week 1.
Right.
When Lena Winslow is the most vulnerable in Week 1.
And based on what we've seen out of Lena Winslow, I guarantee they play that game again. It's probably a bigger score.
Well, Lena Winslow's clicking on all cylinders right now,
right.
And I mean, they look like a team to beat.
Right. So, I mean, West Carroll, you got games against Galena, then the three that you mentioned, then you finish out with East Dubuque. Should be sitting at that 5-4 level. Points will get you in. I mean,
points will get them in, yes.
Points will get you in. You're kind of smelling the finish line here. You're in the midway point. You're sitting at 3 wins. Okay. On paper, it looks good for us to get to 5. You just got to show up and play the games, though.
Right. I mean, really, realistically, West Carroll can go 5-4 and Stockton only needs one more win, and West Carroll will get in.
Right.
Because that'll put them right around that 37, 38 point mark, which is usually the average of where that playoff point is.
Right, and I mean Stockton's going to win more than 3 games.
Yes.
I mean,
which is going to push.
Right.
I anticipate West Carroll being around that 40 point mark.
Right. Which
so at 5-4, they're definitely in if they get 40 points.
Right. Exactly.
Even 39, they're going to be in.
Right. So bottom line for me, you know, 2 teams like to air it out. Maybe better defensive effort on West Carroll's part should come away with that home victory.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what West Carroll does. I kind of anticipate them winning this game pretty big. You know, 3 or 4 scores probably. I mean, based off of what we've seen out of them already this season. But it's at home, so it should be a big game for them. They get a run through the motorcycles. They haven't been at home in a little bit because they did play the one game at Mount Carroll instead of at Savannah. So, West Carroll. Our upstate game of the week takes us back to Milledgeville. Is that 3 weeks in a row?
Yeah, I think it is. Well, that's, I mean, if you're Milledgeville, you like it. It means you got a good team.
So, Orangeville at Milledgeville. Both teams come in with a 3-1 record. Last year in this game, Milledgeville won 53-6 in Week 4. Shane, you were at that game.
Oh, was I ever?
Yeah, and even then, I mean, we anticipated a better game than what took place, unfortunately for the Broncos.
What took place. Yeah.
A shellacking.
Yeah.
Anyway, last week, Orangeville beat AFC 20-0, while Milledgeville took care of River Valley, not 89-0, but it was 65-0.
Close. It wasn't far off.
No, you weren't. Especially considering the fact that it was like 59-0 at halftime.
They should have went for it. Prove those NUIC guys right.
Well, I mean, I respect Jason Roble for backing off the horse.
Easy boy.
But this game got a lot riding on the line. I mean, you got a game here that can really challenge who's going to take control of the 3-1 teams to kind of put your place in spot with either Stockton or Aquin, as both those 2 teams are officially undefeated yet in the Upstate Conference. It'll be interesting to see what kind of matchup we get here. I mean, Milledgeville is more of a running team. Orangeville wants to run and throw the ball, so they can be a little bit more deceptive. Last week, outside of basically Milledgeville running all over River Valley, there's not much to talk about there. But Orangeville, in their game with AFC, I mean, they threw the ball and they ran the ball. And you saw some different players take the lead. Dalton Lowe was their leading rusher. Garrett Rodaball was up in there this week as well. You still have Austin Guy, who's pretty much running the show from the quarterback position. Shane, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, last year, you forget about it. You know, it's done. It's a year old. Orangeville's still probably thinking, man, we should be 4-0, which, you know, last year, where were they, you know? I mean,
not 4-0.
Right, exactly. So, obviously, Orangeville has a lot more going for it this year, even defensively. I mean, leaps and bounds better than last year. That's quite obvious.
Well, they're a year older.
Right. And offensively, they're more balanced. You know, last year, covering that game, I think Orangeville tried to pass, I don't know, quite a bit more than what they're passing now. Even when we get the box scores sent to us, it's still like, wow, he only had that many throws? And, I mean, they're still winning, which I still think that Orangeville's best offensive threat is through the air at this point. So, and they haven't really exploited that to the level in which I think they will against these upper echelon teams. So, you know, sitting there at 3-1, going against Milledgeville at 3-1, you start to wonder, okay, the majority of it, the same teams are back. The only difference is, can we make up 47 points? Now, last year, yeah, things got out of hand. Some missed tackles, a lot of missed tackles and whatnot. So, do they make it up or do they not? I don't think they make it up completely, but I do not anticipate a 40-point win for Milledgeville, to say the least.
I don't either, but then again, we have been wrong in the past on that.
That is true, but really,
no, I agree. I think Orangeville is doing things the way that they need to. They're starting to get the run game going to possibly open up the pass.
Right.
Because you're right, we haven't seen them pass the ball as much as we anticipated them passing the ball, or as much as they probably should be with their offense and what it holds. Milledgeville, on the other hand, we know what they are. They can throw the ball too, but they're gonna run at you. And this game is in Milledgeville, and I like the missiles.
Yeah, and I mean, basically everything that we've talked about to this point, at this point in the season, I think it just bodes better for Milledgeville at this point.
All right, so Shane, we're on to our Northwest game of the week, and here we have Galena Winslow at EPC. And both these two teams obviously have made headway in our game of the week in the past. Both of them, of course, are already facing Forreston. Galena Winslow winning that game by 2 scores, while EPC just lost to Forreston by 2 scores. Last week, Galena Winslow moved to 4-0 on the year with their 54-12 win over Galena, while EPC fell to Forreston last week in Lanark, 30-18. But Shane, this game is in Pearl City, and last year EPC beat Galena Winslow in Pearl City, 28-14 in Week 1. And the last time Pearl City lost, or I should say EPC lost in Pearl City, was back in 2006 to Galena Winslow, 42-13. Since then, EPC is 24-0 at the past year. What do you think?
Well, that's all fine and dandy. They've played some good teams there. I mean, in 2006 they lost. 2010 they ended Dakota's conference winning streak. Last year, what happened?
Upsetting a highly touted Galena Winslow team. Emphatically.
Right. I mean, realistically, at Pearl City, they are unbeatable. But I'm going to put an end to this crap. It's bull hunky. After Friday night, they'll be 24-1 in the last 25 of Pearl City. This Galena Winslow team is clicking on all cylinders. Had this game taken place in Week 1, maybe we'll have a different script to write. I don't know. In my opinion, you can use the Forreston cliche here. Galena Winslow beats Forreston by 2. Forreston beats EPC by 2. Galena Winslow beat them on the road at Forreston. Very tough place to play at Forreston here lately. It's no secret. Look at the teams that Forreston's had. Even in the years where Galena Winslow and Dakota won their state championships, always going to Forreston and winning was a tough thing to do. Not much has changed there. Forreston is still one of the premier teams, and Galena Winslow pretty much made that game of their own. So, break it down a little bit more. EPC doesn't match up well with Galena Winslow, in my opinion. The pasture is going to take a loss. Yeah, said it.
EPC has very good athletes. I feel that they are much stronger on both the offensive and defensive lines this year. But having seen both play, so to speak, vicariously through you, of course. But I have seen Galena Winslow play. I would agree. Outside of that first week victory that they had against West Carroll, Galena Winslow benefited from the fact that they had to play Forreston in week 2. And here's the reason why. They had to up their level of play to beat Forreston in week 2, knowing that they were the defending state champs. And if we want to get to that level, that's who we have to beat. And since that point, they haven't stopped. I mean, I look at Ravion's stats. And don't get me wrong, Sean Ormiston is doing a great job. For only being a sophomore, he's getting a lot of carries, a lot of yards, and a lot of scores. And he's solid. He is a key ingredient to what the Panther offense does. But as great as Ravion has been through his career to this point, keep in mind he was the leading rusher coming into the season in career yards. I am impressed with where he has gotten to already this year against the competition that they faced. So, I mean, Ravion has really picked up at a whole different level, in my opinion, this year. And I mean, last year he struggled against EPC. I mean, he didn't even break 60 yards rushing against EPC last season. They just shut him down. But I think one of the biggest losses EPC faced coming into this season was that of Brighton Haverland at defensive end. I mean, he was a game changer. He really was. He forced teams to go in one direction. Well, when you force teams to go in one direction, what's that do? It becomes predictable. And then you just have to rely on others to be able to pick up the fact that you just eliminated one half of the field.
Well, EPC has done that. And I mean, you see that with Forreston now with Barkalow on the one side. Nobody wants to run at him. So when you force everything on one side, you're more successful. And like you said, Valentine, I mean, looking at his stats at this point, you know, he's getting a handful of carries a night and still breaking 100, 200 yards. I mean, he's healthy.
He is.
He's healthy this year. And, I mean...
And he's looked the best I've ever seen him look.
I mean, that goes a long way. You know, what's a running back's most vital asset health-wise? His ankles. What's Valentine had the most problem with? His ankles.
In the past.
Right. A healthy Valentine is a premier back in the league, premier back in the state. If EPC does contain him, though, this could be a very close game. I just do not see them containing him.
One of the things that I noticed with Lena Winslow in the last couple of years, and it wasn't so much a big thing, but it was crucial to the offense that they run, and that was the lack of a fullback or a power runner. They've always thrived when they've had that power running fullback. And I mean, Ormiston isn't, I wouldn't say a fullback. I would say he's a halfback, but he runs like he's a fullback. I mean, the kid just lowers his shoulder and he pulls right through you. That is the Lena Winslow offense that we're used to seeing. That is something that lacked last year. They relied too much on outside speed.
Right. That was shut down.
And that was easy to defend for the teams that could play with them. Now, granted, speed is always a killer if you don't have speed that can match up with it. The problem is when you go up against a high-quality opponent, such as Forreston was last year, they can eliminate that speed. And EPC was fast. They're still fast this year. They can eliminate that speed. We saw that this past week against Forreston. I mean, they didn't shut AJ down or Gavin down, but outside of one big run by AJ, I mean, they helped limit them a lot. I mean, Forreston won that game really on a Dawes to Barkalow pass play. And then, of course, they caught Forreston off guard defensively, of all things. One thing that Forreston prides themselves on the most is defense. And they caught him on two big plays.
Right. So,
EPC is not going to be a slouch in this game. I don't anticipate him being a slouch in this game. But like you, I do like Lena Winslow in this matchup to end the streak in Pearl City. and it's gonna end where it began. Galena Winslow. All right, so that is where we're at for our Week 5 predictions and matchups. We do anticipate some good games. Like you said, Shane, Amboy and East Dubuque, even though both teams are 1-3, that could be a very great game, and it's going to be a big game in my opinion. Both teams are in must-win situations as well. Orangeville at Milledgeville, obviously our upstate game of the week, along with Galena Winslow at EPC, and then of course the crossover game, Aquin at Forreston. All are critical games for each side, or at least big matchups anyway. It'll be interesting to see how each of them play out. I mean, I'm really interested in Aquin and Forreston. I want to see what Aquin can do with Forreston's defense, because that's going to speak volumes of what Aquin's future will present come playoff time. Galena Winslow EPC, obviously, despite EPC's loss, I still anticipate EPC being ranked in the top 10 in Class 1A when the AP polls come out. They shouldn't fall out as long as the AP's ranking them in the 1A polls. I mean, if they were in our 1A poll, I'd probably have them in our top 10. But we have them in 2A because that's where the cutoff line's at. Anyhow.
Yeah.
Good games.
Right. I mean, that's kind of what we've really come used to seeing. I mean, conference year in, year out is good. I mean, you got some good games. Every week it seems like you got a battle going on. You know, week 5 you're getting closer to that automatic qualifier. We'll probably only have one team this week if everything plays out the way we think to get to that 5-win plateau. And basically, at that point, we would only have one undefeated team left in the conference, and
which speaks volumes for the parity that you said before.
So, you know, just another week. Give us more content to talk about next week. I mean, some good games. Just look forward to it.
I mean, I look at this board and it's like, man, this is looking good for the conference, and it does. And I mean, still anticipating quite a few playoff teams. I mean, 8 minimum for sure. Possibly 9 or 10.
Right,
so that's huge.
See how it goes.
So, out to the ball games this Friday night. It's going to be a great week once again in the NUIC. And, as always, root for the NUIC.